Vote. I will vote for Donald Trump. Hey guys, welcome. We're going to talk about what we talked about today in Social Studies 20. I was just having a good time there. So today we talked about self-determination. Remember, self-determination is when people want to be in charge of their own affairs. So that essentially could be because it offers them a sense of security, because they want to follow the ideology of the majority, or they just want independence. And so there's a number of things when we talk about a number of types of self-determination. There's decolonization, when a nation receives its independence, which was previously a colony. There is a sovereignty association. So sovereignty association essentially is when a nation is independent within another nation. And so, for example, Quebec would be a proponent of sovereignty association. So that's some of the stuff we talked about. We also talked about how marginalization could essentially lead to self-determination. We talked about Black Wall Street in Tulsa, Oklahoma, how essentially when people of color and other people around the world, when they're marginalized, they oftentimes desire self-determination. We saw that as a case with Serbians in Austro-Hungary in the build-up to the First World War. And so we talked about some case studies when it comes to self-determination. We talked about India and how India got its independence in the 1940s and some of the conflict that arose as a result of that. We also looked at the Balkans, the powder keg of Europe. And why it's called the powder keg of Europe is because of such ethnic conflict within the area. Shortly after the First World War, when the maps were redrawn, the nation of Yugoslavia had a bunch of different ethnic groups together, and Tito, the dictator of the of Yugoslavia, he was able to repress nationalism. However, when he passed Milosevic, who was the leader of the Serbian nationalists, he began to express Serbian nationalism that had been held dominant for so long, and oftentimes it resulted in violence. And so we talked about how balkanization, essentially these hostile groups, how we see that also in the media when everyone goes into these camps. You have Fox News, CNN, MSNBC, and we start to see hostility towards each other, just as we saw in the Balkans. And so the last thing we talked about is how essentially colonization, some of the negative legacies left in Africa, such as corruption, inefficient governments, which are not just inherent to Africa and African governments, but actually are a long product of colonization. Please go over your notes, and I'll see you guys tomorrow. I will vote for Donald Trump.